6-packs and a big bag of ice. 2 6-packs and a big bag of ice.
Alright, so we got the Teflon tape on our bulkhead and the gasket in place, and then we're going to put it inside so that this is facing down. Stick it out through the hole. Take our washer, put it on the outside. Now some cases this washer will need to be left out, and I'll let you know how to determine that. We're going to try it with the washer first. And the ball valve started on here. You got to hold the bulkhead on the inside, obviously. Okay, the gasket's getting snug. There will be a point where you have to hold the, I'm using a very small pipe wrench on the interior to hold the elbow from turning. So I want that to be facing down. So here we have an example of a 3-piece ball valve that's installed with the elbow bulkhead on the interior, and when everything got nice and snug where we want it, the ball valve was 180 degrees out of rotation as to where we want it to be. So you take the nuts off of the 3-piece valve, and you can see how this comes apart. Now this is how you take this apart to clean. Here are the Teflon seals. You just pop these all out, and you can clean this whole thing by soaking in OxiClean. But the point I wanted to show you here was that it's very simple to rotate the valve into the orientation that you wanted or that you expected, and then pop it back together. And keep in mind, if you got a heat shield that fits a ball valve, now would be the time to install that, because you have to remove the bottom 2 bolts to get that onto a 3-piece valve anyway. I could show you. Alright, so that just faces down into the bottom of the pot, and it's rotated down. It's probably about 3/16 off of the bottom. The ball valve is in position. Alright, so that's how you install a bulkhead and ball valve. It really doesn't matter what bulkhead specifically you use. But that's basically the procedure. There's 2 reasons why this might leak after you get done. The first one is if you notice that the gasket doesn't crush about half of its original thickness, it's likely that you need a thicker shim washer on here. If you tried it without a washer, go ahead and take it back apart and put the washer in. If you have a washer in and it's still not crushing the gasket, you're probably going to want one more washer to shim it out just a little bit more. Now if the gasket is crushing and you're still getting a drip out of here, you probably want to add more Teflon tape to the joint between the bulkhead and the valve. So if you put 3 turns on it before, take it apart, clean it up, and put maybe 5 or 6 turns, and try it again. Alright, so that's how you install the ball valve. Now you put whatever you want on here, a hose barb or a Type F cam lock or what have you. Next we're going to move up to the weldless thermometer. The weldless thermometer, basically you turn this thermometer into weldless like putting a stainless washer on here and a gasket, and then putting a lock nut on there. And then the first thing we want to do is get some Teflon tape on the threads and have the probe facing towards you and wrap clockwise. And you want to get, now this is nice thick Teflon tape, Blue Monster from Lowe's. So I'm going to put probably 4 full turns on here. If you have the white stuff, you're going to want to put like 6 or 7 turns on here because it's thinner. Alright, so it should look like that. Then put the metal washer on there. Now the silicone gasket goes on the interior, and so does the lock nut. Okay, there's the lock nut. So we're going to push this through the hole. Work your silicone gasket on there all the way down to the pot wall. Takes a little bit of work because these gaskets have a smaller inside diameter than the threads itself for a nice tight fit, but you've got to work it on there. Okay, so the gasket's practically holding it together already. Now we're just going to take our lock nut and screw it on. Okay, and as it starts getting really snug, you don't want to use the dial as leverage like a wrench anymore. There's a hex behind the face. It's 7/8. Now you could use a 7/8 wrench like this one, or you can use an adjustable wrench that's thin enough to fit behind here. Now once the gasket is contacted by the lock nut, what I much prefer to turning the lock nut anymore is to just put a wrench on the lock nut itself and then use the hex to tighten. And the reason for that is that I don't like dragging the lock nut against the gasket. So now's a good time to start looking at the face of the thermometer and seeing when it's about to become upright. Alright, so just while this is upright, you want to just take a quick look at your gasket to make sure that it's crushed to about half of its original thickness, and that will tell you that it's going to create a decent seal. If you have to turn this, say, another 90 degrees to get the gasket to be crushed, one thing that I recommend doing is rotating the entire assembly, lock nut and all, nice and carefully counterclockwise to where it's about 45 degrees off, and then holding the lock nut and tightening the dial face back up to the upright position. You always want to finish in the upright position when you're doing a tightening rotation. You don't want to have to back off to it because then you're disrupting your Teflon tape. So if you over rotate this and you need to do it again, you just want to take it apart and put some fresh Teflon tape on there. It's a hassle, but that's really how you get this to be leak free. So it's nice and snug, it doesn't move around too much, and that's going to be a nice leak-free seal. Okay, well, I have other videos on how to install a sight glass kit, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I will say that the one thing you want to make sure you do is to remove the gasket with the washer and bushing in your hand. Push that through the hole. Now you put the gasket on. The gasket goes on the outside of the pot, and you can just push it on there best you can. And then holding your fitting in place, your sight glass fitting, you just tighten the bushing from the inside. And hand tight is really all you need. You want this gasket to crush just a little bit. And hand tight is all you need. You just want this gasket to crush just a little bit. And notice this is the only device of the 3 things that we installed where the gasket is on the outside. Okay, no washers on the outside, no stainless washers. Okay, and now this mark that I made here was for the original mark we made, I have to remember to make a mark a 1/2 inch over from there. So we're going to drill for our eye bolt, and we're just going to have to cut this because the lid will stick out past this lip. So that's one thing I'm going to do here is mark about 1/8 of an inch below that lip. That's where we're going to cut it. Now I'm often asked how to cut polycarbonate for height. You can use a tubing cutter that you would get at a home center for cutting copper tubing if you're doing some plumbing in the house, or you can use a hacksaw. That'll cut it just fine. You might just find that the hacksaw won't cut very straight. You'll have to do some sanding with a piece of sandpaper wrapped around a wood block, but you'll still get a pretty nice finish out of it by doing that. Alright, so that's where I'm going to leave it. I just wanted to show you basically how you would add some accessories to a regular boil pot, a regular flat bottom pot. Now whether this is a boil kettle or a hot liquor tank, this is how I'd set both of those up, to be honest with you. I like having a sight glass in both of those vessels. You could argue that a thermometer isn't as necessary in a boil kettle, but if you're going to be using an immersion chiller and you want to monitor how fast the wort is cooling down or what the present temperature is, it's useful for that. And also the thermometer also tells you at a glance from across the room when you're getting close to boiling temperatures, so you know when to come and sort of watch for a boil over.